So, so I'm going to make some reference to some of the Puranas and some of the stories about Hanuman. Maybe you haven't heard, and some of you have heard. So, the story of Hanuman goes back even before the pastimes of Lord Ram, even before, way before the pastimes of Lord Ram. There's an interesting story about Narada Muni and Vishnu. Some of you may have heard this story. That Narada Muni, basically Vishnu wanted to show him what, Lord Vishnu wanted to show him what Maya was like. So because this is a pastime. Narada Muni is always a pure devotee, but it's a pastime. So Narada Muni basically fell in love. And he wanted to marry this princess. And the point is that the princesses had this ceremony called Swayamvara. Swayamvara means the princess picks her own person, you know. Not that she's forced to marry someone, but she can say no. So Narada Muni approached Lord Vishnu and said, give me a face that no one will forget. Everybody will remember it. And so Lord Vishnu, to teach a lesson, gave him like a monkey face. And so there's this Swayamvara in which everyone was lined up to marry the princess, or hoping the princess would choose them. And so what happened is that the princess was walking through there, and Narada at that time didn't know what he looked like. So he was thinking, he looks so nice. And so then what happens is that she looked at him, and eventually she chose Vishnu. But anyway, so Narada was wondering, what's wrong with me? And then he looked in the mirror, and then he saw a monkey face. So nobody will forget that face, that's for sure. So then he got really angry at Lord Vishnu, and he cursed him and said, you're going to have to depend on a monkey to achieve victory now. So Lord Vishnu accepted that curse. So many times you have these curses and counter curses, and it really helps the Lord in his pastimes. So then, when Ravan was creating all of his problems in the universe and on the planet, and I'm not going to tell the story about Ravan, there's so many stories about him. But in any case, then there was a complaint made to Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma went to Lord Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu said, you got to all appear on this earth planet, the demigods that is, to help the Lord in his pastimes, because he's going to appear very, very soon. Well, I'm going to appear. There's Lord Vishnu speaking. And so then the demigods descended as various monkeys and whatever, bears, because Ravan had not gotten the benediction that he couldn't be killed by monkeys, bears, or human beings. He was very, very proud of this. We know that story goes. So Hanuman appeared in a very special way. It involves another pastime of the Lord, where the Lord appeared as Mohini Murti. Everybody's heard of the Mohini Murti incarnation? This is actually from the Shiva Purana. This story you probably haven't heard about Hanuman's appearance. But during the appearance of Mohini Murti, of course, Mohini Murti, the female incarnation of Krishna, tricked all the demons and took back the Amrit and gave it to the demigods. But also, Lord Shiva, after this pastime, asked to see Mohini Murti. And he started chasing her all over the world. And, you know, I guess, to use a polite word, left some of his genetic material. I guess it's a nice way to say it. And that genetic material was transported by Vayu, the wind god, to Hanuman's mother, Anjani. So he's called Anjani Sutta. And Anjani is a very special personality. He's not just an ordinary Kimpurusha. Hanuman was not a monkey, he was a Kimpurusha. Kimpurusha means almost a human being, or is it a human being? It's a question in Sanskrit. Kimpurusha? Like that, that's how it said, Kimpurusha. And, you know, they look little bit my monkey tails and everything like that, but not quite like the monkeys you see in Vrindavan, the rhesus monkeys. Anyone here has been to Vrindavan?
Yes.
No. You see the monkeys there? Not exactly the same. So the story of Hanuman's mother is very interesting. She previously was an assistant to Brahaspati. Brahaspati is the priest of the demigods. And Brahaspati was engaging her in fetching water for a sacrifice. And so when she went to fetch water for a sacrifice, she happened to see the Gandharvas and the Apsaras and everything like that engage in romantic affairs. And she became quite lusty at that point. And so when Brahaspati came back, or she went to Brahaspati, she started to kiss and embrace Brahaspati. And he said to her that because you were acting like a monkey, you should become a monkey. So she was in the heavenly planets. She wasn't a monkey, or she wasn't a Kimpurusha. He said, you should become like a monkey. And she begged for forgiveness. And he said, all right, as soon as you give birth, then you can come back to the heavenly planets. So this is a very interesting story. So she's down there, she marries Keshari, and then the wind god comes and he puts the embryo from Lord Shiva. Because Hanuman is considered to be the son of the wind. He's the son of Lord Shiva, or expansion under Lord Shiva, and also the son of Anjani. So 3 different things, and Keshari too. So he puts the embryo in the womb of Anjani, and eventually, of course, she gives birth. And as soon as she gives birth, she's going back to the heavenly planets. Finished. And so what happens is that he's born, and he says to his mother, where's the food? And she's on her way back, and she says, well, look for something nice and red. You know, something that's like glowing red, like an orange or something. She was thinking an orange. And he looks up in the sky, and what does he see? He sees the sun. You think, delicious. So he goes, part of the story is from the Bhagavatam too, but he goes and he chases after the sun. At the same time, there was someone else who was chasing after the sun. That was Rahu. And Rahu said, you know, I'm supposed to chase after the sun. And Hanuman said, get out of here. And, you know, it's so powerful, even as a little baby monkey or baby Kimpurusha, he was able to get rid of Rahu. So Rahu goes back and he complains to Indra. He says, this is the order of the universe. You know, I was supposed to have this particular service. And Indra comes back and he challenges Hanuman. And he fires his thunderbolt at Hanuman. And he hits Hanuman. Hanuman falls to the ground, and actually in a cave and everything like that. And so he becomes unconscious, and practically it's thought that he's going to die. So Vayu, his father, comes to see his son. And Vayu is very upset. What does he do? He chokes off everybody in the whole universe. It stops all the life airs from flowing, so everybody is, you know, completely asphyxiated and suffering in the whole universe. And so the demigods come and say, Vayu, you got to do something about this. You know, you can't just kill us all. So he agrees if they bring, Hanuman is brought back into external consciousness. So he's brought back into external consciousness, and the demigods are all there, and they bless Hanuman with different powers. Even Lord Vishnu was there. He blesses Hanuman with invincibility, eternal life, nobody can conquer him. So Hanuman just comes back with more superpowers than even before. He's a real superpower. Superman or super Hanuman. You all like superheroes?
Yeah.
Okay, Hanuman's the best superhero. So that's what he's still very young. And so he's a really cheeky young Kimpurusha. And so he likes playing tricks. Especially he plays tricks on the sages. And some of the descriptions of the tricks he played on the sages are quite interesting. Like he would bring wild animals right outside the door of their house. And what happened is that they would have to go outside their house to relieve themselves because the bathrooms weren't in the house. And they would open the door in the morning and see like tigers and elephants. And eventually they got really upset with him. And they cursed him and said, this kid shouldn't have any powers. But we don't want to take away his powers because he's supposed to serve Lord Ram later. So let's curse him so that he forgets all of his powers. So he forgets all of his powers and he's just a regular monkey. But actually before that, after that actually, some of the powers he remembers. After that, he's thinking, I have to have a guru. So Hanuman's thinking, who's going to be my guru? And then he's informed that your guru is Suryadev. And so you should take initiation from him and hear instructions from him. So Hanuman flies up and he says to Suryadev, will you accept me as your disciple? And of course there's no ISKCON disciple course or...
No IDs.
No tests or anything like that. Pretty easy in those days. Even when I joined the movement, it was pretty easy. I just asked Prabhupada for British days 2 weeks after I joined the movement. No tests, and I'm still here. I ain't gone anywhere. So he goes to the sun god, and he says to the sun god that, I want to be your disciple. The sun god says, yes, but there's a problem. The problem is, I'm always going through the air. Just always going. So what are you going to do? And then, so Hanuman actually says, I'll fly backwards. And you can give me instruction as I'm flying backwards and you're flying forwards. So the sun god is giving him instruction. And he's flying like that. And in some of the Puranas, it's mentioned that Hanuman is the first person to do Surya Namaskar. Because he's going like this, cut backwards to Suryadev, to the sun. So he's flying like that. Some of the Puranas state that. And so he's flying back. So after some time, he gets all the instruction from the sun god. And he asks the sun god, what Guru Dakshin do you want? It's interesting. What do you give the sun? Can't give you too much. Anyway, so do this one. So the sun god says something very interesting. He says, I have a son, and I want you to always serve my son and protect my son. Does anyone think of who that son was?
Sugriva.
You want to hear how Sugriva became the son of the sun?
Yes, Gurudev.
We'll transition to a different story right now. So it's very interesting. Once upon a time, the sun was going around the earth, which it usually does, or the earth was going around the sun, or the earth was rotating, depending. It's all the same thing, depending on your point of view. So what happened is that all of a sudden the sun couldn't move. The sun was frozen in space. And that's because of a story in the Markandeya Purana, where the sage Markandeya was walking and this man who had leprosy touched him by accident, and Markandeya cursed him that you're going to die before the rising of the sun the next day. And so his wife was with him, and this story is a story of the power of a chaste lady. What happened is the lady said, I'm not going to allow the sun to rise the next day. And so the sun just froze there in space. And later on, of course, the husband was saved, because they had to make a deal with the wife. Let the sun move, so, we need it. So what happened is that during that time when the sun had a vacation, Easter vacation or something, so the sun said to his driver, Aruna, that you can actually take a vacation too. So Aruna, this is a little racy story. Anyway, this story's there. Aruna basically wanted to go see the dancing girls that Indra had in his palace. So Aruna goes to Indra's palace, and they don't let him in. It was like a bouncer or a doorkeeper or something like that there. He won't let him in. He said, no, you're not invited. And so Aruna's thinking, how can I go and see it? So he decides, well, they let ladies in. So he changes himself into a Runi. And then Indra, to make a long story short, Indra becomes interested in him. And as a result, can you guess who was born? Bali. Bali is born at that point. And so there's Bali. And then Aruna, he comes back into Aruna. And he comes back and the sun god says, where were you? And Aruna says, you don't want to know. And if you actually say to someone you don't want to know, that's like a challenge. You better tell me. You ever speaking to your son or daughter and you ask, where were you last few hours? And say, you don't want to know. You better tell me. So the sun god's the boss of Aruna. So anyway, Aruna told him, and then sun god said, I'd like to see that form. And as a result, Sugriva was born. So that's why you have Sugriva and Bali. They're brothers. They're actually half brothers.
Yeah.
But that's the story of Sugriva and Bali, and why they're so powerful, because they're Aruna, Aruni, and Indra, and of course the sun god. And so Hanuman was always serving the sun god in this particular way, and always serving Sugriva, like protecting Sugriva. That's why when Sugriva was banished, went to Mount Rishimukh, that Hanuman was with him. Incidentally, Hanuman also had a jewel that was given to him when he was revived by the demigods, and it was stated that the only person who could see that jewel would be Lord Ram. So when he actually flew off Mount Rishimukh to see what Lord Ram and Lakshman were doing, and of course Hanuman put on the form of a Brahmin at that particular point. So he was acting like, he was very intelligent, very educated. And so he was acting like a Brahmin, and then Lord Ram said, what's that jewel around your neck? And then Hanuman realized, most of you don't know this story, these are all new stories, from the Valmiki Ramayana and the Puranas. Hanuman realized that that's my Lord. And he bowed down and he went to help Lord Ram. So, fast forward. When he was sent, there's actually so many interesting stories about Hanuman. When he was sent to look for Sita Devi, let's go to that story. So they went to the shore, the ocean shore, and of course, as we know, they couldn't cross. Nobody knew what to do, and Sampati, of course, the brother of Jatayu, informed them eventually. I mean, I'm leaving out a lot of details because I go on forever. Informed them that Sita was in the Ashok Grove in Lanka. And so they were talking, who can reach Lanka? And Hanuman, he just didn't know anything about his powers at that point. He had forgotten them. He knew some powers, but he didn't have so many powers at that point. And so they were all talking, and finally, Jambavan, who Prabhupada describes was not a bear. He was the king of the bears. Because you understand, Krishna married his daughter later on, and Krishna doesn't marry bears. Jambavati. Can you imagine like a bear? Krishna and his wife, the bear. It really wouldn't work out too well. So, Jambavan basically informed Hanuman, because Jambavan had actually seen Lord Ram's pastimes before. Jambavan is considered Shiram Jiva, which means he's the son of Lord Brahma, and he's lived through many, many different cycles. Because Lord Ram appears once in a day of Lord Brahma. Do you know that? When Krishna appears, Lord Chaitanya appears once in a day of Lord Brahma. So he knew about it. He's been through it before. And so he knew that Hanuman was the one who was supposed to cross the ocean. So he said to Hanuman, you have great powers, you can cross the ocean. And Hanuman just expanded himself, stood on the mountain there and jumped off. And it's described in the Valmiki Ramayana. He jumped off, he created such a suction behind him that all the trees and boulders followed him practically half the way to Lanka. And of course, I'm not going to talk about the story of the Surasa and humans he met on the way there. So he arrives in Lanka, and he's looking for Sita Devi, and he doesn't know where she is. Finally, well, actually, there's a story of Lankini. So many stories there that he makes himself real small to enter Lanka, and there's this lady Lankini who's the guardian of Lanka, and she sees him trying to enter, making himself really small, and he eventually ends up, punching her in the jaw. She said, "Oh my God!" It was predicted that when a monkey defeats me and punches me in the jaw, then Lanka is going to be defeated. So Hanuman enters and he makes himself really small. He's flying around trying to find Sita Devi. He enters into Ravana's palace where Ravana has all of his wives, and they're all drunk. So Hanuman is flying around, little tiny Hanuman, flying around, and at one point he actually first thing he thinks is, what am I doing here? I'm a brahmachari, flying around and all these drunk ladies around, half dressed or whatever like that. And then he sees Ravan, and right next to him is his consort, Mandodari. And so he thinks, first of all, he thinks maybe that's Sita, but then he realizes, no, Sita would not be with Ravan. And then he gets ready to kill Ravan, but then he thinks, no, this is his loyalty to Ram. He never goes beyond what he's told to do. Sometimes certain servants will think, I know better than my master. I should kill him and do the work. But he was explicitly told, you're only supposed to find Sita. That's it. Bas. Lord Ram told him that. Nothing else. And so then he's still looking around, and then he encounters Vibhishan, of course, and he sees that Vibhishan is a great devotee of Ram and chanting Ram, Nam. And he asks Vibhishan, how do you live here? And Vibhishan says, I live like the tongue between the teeth. You understand? You bite your tongue.
Oh.
You understand? Like that.
With all the bad guys around him.
Yeah, because they're all bad guys, and he
Yeah.
was the one good guy, and he's always chanting Ram Nam. And so then, finally, he finds a Sita Devi in Ashok Grove. Of course, he makes himself really small as not to frighten Sita Devi, and he starts chanting the glories of Ram. Sita's a little frightened. And then he shows her the ring that he's brought. And then she realizes, and he tells Sita, I can take you back on my back. And Sita says, not a good idea. Because first of all, you'd be fighting off all the Rakshasas. And then, at that point, I'd probably fly off. That's one reason. Another reason is that I will never touch another male like that. I mean, Ravana kidnapped me, but I would never voluntarily have another male touch me, because I'm only chased. I'm chased to Lord Ram. So he says, okay, but I just want to test all these soldiers in the Ravana's kingdom. And he starts to destroy the Ashok Grove, and then there's a variety of Rakshasas who come to attack him. And some funny things really happen according to the Valmiki Ramayana. Of course, he kills them all. And one time, he just like, the first Rakshasa, he actually urinates into the mouth of the Rakshasa. And then he says, what are you doing? Oh, a monkey, what do you say? You can get away with a lot of things like that. And then eventually, he gets captured by Indrajit. And he allows himself to be captured by Indrajit by the rope of Rama. And he had the benediction that he'd be able to get freed, at least when someone used ordinary ropes afterwards. So he was able to get free, and then he said, just very quickly, because you all know the story. He sets Lanka on fire, and he flies back victorious, and then he goes back with the monkeys to meet Lord Ram and Sugriva and tell him of his finding Sita Devi. And on the way back, he arranges for the monkeys to have a celebration. And what was that celebration? There was a honey grove called Manuvan, which was Sugriva's honey grove. And there was one monkey who was guarding it. His name was Dadi Mukh. That name of the monkey. And so all the monkeys go into this honey grove and get drunk. Not Hanuman. He doesn't get drunk. He's good. And so they get drunk. And then they tell Lord Ram, and then they proceed to Lanka, and that's the rest of the story. I'm not going to any further, except just a few more stories about Hanuman. One story is his dedication to Ram and Sita. This is a famous story. People ask, why is Hanuman covered with the cinder all the time? Because, of course, once upon a time, after Ram and Sita and Hanuman, they were back in Ayodhya, then Hanuman saw Sita Devi putting on the cinder on her hair. And he asked Sita Devi, why do you do this? And she said, it's very auspicious for Ram when I do this. So Hanuman had a better idea. So he started to smear the cinder all over his body so that he would give more auspiciousness to him. And when Sita saw him, she thought, what is he doing? She didn't even recognize him. She was like, what is red ball? Just one final story from the Brihad Bhagavatamrita about Hanuman is Hanuman's chastity to Lord Ram. This is also from the Puranas. That once upon a time, this was a little over 5,000 years ago, Krishna was in Dwarka. And Hanuman actually was in Kim Purusha Loka. Hanuman is still there today. And if you're a devotee of Lord Ram, Hanuman can visit you. If you're a good devotee of Lord Ram. What pleases Hanuman is if you please Lord Ram. See, Hanuman likes that more than if you worship him directly. Actually, I travel with little Hanuman Devi all the time because he protects me. So, anyway, so the story is as follows: that Krishna in Dwarka wanted to see Hanuman. And so he naturally sent a message through Garuda, the bird carrier of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Garuda arrives in Purusha Loka and says, Hanuman, time to come. Krishna wants to see you. Hanuman knows Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He knows the philosophy. He's very intelligent. And he says, I'm not going. I'm not doing anything unless Lord Ram tells me. So this is very important, that each and every devotee of the Lord has the specific form of the Lord that they worship, and they're very focused on that. Recently we've been reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita about one of the associates, or actually two of the associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One was Murari Gupta, and the other one was Anupama, who were very dedicated to Lord Ram. Actually, Murari Gupta is considered an incarnation of Hanuman. And Lord Chaitanya, in one case, and Sanatana Goswami in another case, tried to dissuade them from chanting Sita Ram and told them, just chant Hare Krishna. Just chant Hare Krishna. And they tried and started crying, I can't do it, because they were so devoted.
Wow.
So this is one of the main things we can learn from Hanuman is devotion to the pleasure of his master. So we should be very devoted in the same way to our Ishta Devata and the Vaishnavas. So anyway, so getting back to the story. So Hanuman was told by Garuda that you have to come see Krishna. And he said, I'm not going. And Garuda said, you have to come, because I'm Garuda. And Hanuman basically swished his tail, and Garuda went boom, flying through the air, all the way back to Krishna's lotus feet. And it turns out that there's some other stories about Garuda getting very, very proud. Another story is that one time Guru even said to Lord Vishnu, without me you can't go anywhere. And Lord Vishnu said, all right. And he put his elbow on Guru's back or wing or something. And he said, fly bird. And Guru was crushed. So, Guru was actually humiliated by this particular circumstance. And Krishna understood why Hanuman wouldn't see him, so he transformed himself into Lord Ram, because Ram and Krishna are the same person. Advaita Chuta Nadananta Rupamajam Purana Purusham Lavayoganam Cha. And of course Sita was manifest by Rukmini. And so then Guru gives him the message, Ram and Sita want to see you. So then he flies and he sees Ram and Sita, and he's very happy to see his worshipful deities again. And of course there's the story, just another story was the opening of his chest, and Ram and Sita were in his chest because he was accused one time. Well, this is interesting. Sita Devi gave him some pearls, a necklace of pearls. And so he was chewing on these pearls. He said, I'm looking to see Ram and Sita inside the pearls. That's pretty good. And they said, you're just a monkey. What love do you have for Ram and Sita? And he said, you'll see. And he went like that. Inside was Rama, Sita, and Ram. So these are some of the stories about Hanuman, and we don't have all night. It's actually already 7:30. So it's Hanuman Jayanti, his appearance, so we should celebrate Hanuman Jayanti by our faithfulness to our worshipful deity and our gurus and everything like that. That will actually give us Krishna consciousness. That's the point. That's what we learn. They're nice stories, but we can learn something from each and every story in the Vedic literatures. So thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? Quick questions? No?
Just a question about the cycle in saying that Lord Ram appears
Once in a day in Lord Brahma.
So what happens with all the other manvantras in the day of Brahma? Like when all the other cycles,
The other cycles, there's other incarnations.
So these
we don't hear about 1/1000th of the incarnations and avatars of the Lord. Prabhupada explained that Krishna has incarnations in every species of life. We know about Macha, we know about Kurma, we know about Varaha, but every species of life means down to the insignificant ants. So one day if you see an ant with a peacock feather on,
No, that's Krishna.
don't get rid of him. Offer your obeisances. But no, it's a fact that Krishna has unlimited. It's described in the Bhagavatam like waves of the ocean. They come one after the other, after the other, after the other.
So does the Ramayana take place in every Krita Yuga then? Or
No.
No, it doesn't. Okay.
Once in a day of Lord Brahma. And Krishna Avatar once in a day of Lord Brahma. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu once in a day of Lord Brahma.
So we're very fortunate it's only been
500 years.
Yeah. In every Kali Yuga, there's Krishna Sankirtan is the Yuga Dharma, but it's not that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears. There's other incarnations or avatars, to be more precise. Okay? Yes?
Actually, in ISKCON, as a practicing devotee, we've been instructed as dovetailing is the process. And
What is the process?
Dovetail.
Dovetail.
Yeah, so Hanuman is given as a reference, an example, where his anger is dovetailed in the service of
Right.
the Lord when he burned the Lanka, when he was saying that, Maharaj.
Right.
So just want to learn from Hanuman's anger.
How you can use anger.
Yeah.
We are part of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Buddha Rapashta Vegam. Yes, actually you can become angry. This is an interesting point. It's a good question, actually. We can become angry at people who are talking or speaking atheistic philosophy. Like Prabhupada, he spoke really strongly against, atheist scientists and people like that. Of course, my particular point is If we become angry with the philosophy they're teaching, we don't become angry with the person. And Prabhupada, actually, even though it appeared that Prabhupada didn't like the person, Prabhupada liked everybody. So we become angry with the sin, not the sinner, so to speak, as they say in Christianity. Otherwise, you know, we should see if someone has an improper philosophy, then they're suffering because of that. So yeah, so that's how we become angry, or use anger in Krishna service. You really enthusiastic about it? Hopefully no one will ask how you could use lust in. Krishna in the Gita says that, Kama Asmi, I am lust according to me. So anger, lust, anger. Greed we can use, like Prabhupada said, you could take a picture of him when there was a Mayavadi sannyasi pushing money away. He said you could take a picture of him pulling the money and using it in Krishna service. So we can use all these different things in Krishna service. Lust, anger, greed, maybe not illusion. Maybe not. Envy we can use through transcendental competition. Many years ago, I was in charge of some temples in South America, and we were in competition with another famous Sankirtan party called the Radha Damodar Party. Anyone heard of the Radha Damodar Party? Somebody would. And that party was headed up. Oops. Don't run Zoom.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
We got some devotees from New Zealand, Gurudev.
Oh, New Zealand.
Sudharma Mataji.
Sudharma. So that party was headed up by someone named Tamal Krishna. Somebody may have heard of him.
Yes, Gurudev.
And he was very competitive, and I was very competitive. This is transcendent. So during the month of December, we had this thing called the Christmas Marathon. Who can distribute the most books? Who can give the most money to the BBT? Because the BBT is Prabhupada's heart, Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. So I was in South America. He was in North America with his Radha Damodar party with many buses and everything like that. So every day we'd be calling and sharing our scores. And we were doing better than he was. He was getting angrier and angrier. And finally, at the end, we won. But it was like a brotherly competition, you know. It wasn't like chivalry. You know, like chivalry. It wasn't like the anger you know, but it was like chivalry. And at the end, Prabhupada said, after we won, he said, Tamal Krishnadas does not like to get defeated. Because he was very competitive. And then, in those days, I was actually very competitive too. Now, it's peace and love. But, but we were young. I mean, we were all in, actually, our 20s.
Wow.
I think I was 25 or something. Because probably was still on the planet. Yeah, I was about 25. Tamal Krishna was about the same, little older, I think 26 or something. So we were kids, but we were enjoying ourselves, competing to please Prabhupada.
So Maharaj, being greedy for services is fine for Krishna consciousness?
Not that we push other people aside.
Yeah.
That's not good. But we can have some transcendental competition. Prabhupada really loved transcendental competition to please. And the gopis, they were also doing transcendental competition. But they're appreciating each other's service. They're loving each other at the same time. That's the point. It's like chivalry. You really like someone, they're on your same team, and you're competing to please Krishna. So no, don't push anyone aside. We're very happy if people come up and even they can do our service. If someone can do our service, then we can move on to other service. That's very important. It's not that we just want to, as they say, hog service. Let other people do service too. Okay, I think it's time for prasadam, right? No? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. All glories to the divine grace. Shri Prabhupada, Shri Prabhupada, Hanuman Jayanti ki jai.